Hey guys, and welcome to a brand new video. Today I want to be covering the topic of how you can edit like any photographer and in turn begin to develop your own Lightroom editing style. I get asked all the time how I developed my own style and how you can do the exact same thing. And while I personally still think I struggle with this, and I know a whole lot of photographers well into their career that still think they struggle with this too, I have developed some tips and techniques over the years that can really help you out, and we're going to cover them in today's video. And just before we dive into my computer here, I want to just cover why it's important to have an editing style. Now, don't get me wrong, your editing style will change, develop, and grow over the years. Like I said, I feel like I'm still working on mine, but it's so important to have a style because when new people start to see your work, they're going to associate certain colors, certain aspects, certain techniques, even your composition with your work and therefore your editing style. So when they see your photos next time on the explore page, or maybe in a magazine or anywhere really, they're gonna know that that was your work and you took those photos. All right, let's dive into the computer now and start covering these tips and techniques so you can start to edit like any photographer and start building your own Lightroom editing style. So the first thing we're gonna do is actually open up Photoshop. We're gonna be creating a mood board of other images that kind of look very similar and have a cohesive style. So we're gonna be doing that in Photoshop. So the first thing you want to do is open it up and open a new document. Now I'm going to make my new document in the 4:5 ratio, which is 1080 by 1350. And that's just because I crop all my images to 4:5 so they look good and big on the Instagram feed. So after we've opened that up, we are going to come up to the top here and open up view. You're going to come down to new guide layout, and then you're going to want 2 columns and 2 rows. Now this is going to give you a 2x2 square that you can fit 4 photos in, which is perfect. Now I'm going to be using my own photos here because I have already developed my style and I'm just doing this for educational purposes, but you can do this with any photographer's work. You can screenshot them on your phone, you can screenshot them on the Instagram web app, and then just bring them into Photoshop and do exactly what I'm about to do. So I've got my 4 photos here and I'm just going to drag them into Photoshop, and then I'm just going to resize them into these little boxes, and then we're going to get them into Lightroom so I can start editing basically against them. So once you've put all your 4 images in here, you are nearly good to go. Now, what's important here is that all the images look fairly similar. You want to be able to make sure that you can basically achieve what the mood board is kind of aiming at. So if I had a shot here of an aerial of a top-down beach, which was very kind of like blue and orange, and then I had these moody greens in here, it wouldn't really work. So you want to make sure you're keeping the images consistent and cohesive so it makes sense when you're editing. Okay, so once you've imported your mood board into Lightroom, it's going to look a little something like this. Now, this here is the image that we're going to edit against, and as you can see, it is dark, moody with some of these greens, and these trees are probably going to start to look a little bit orange, but that works perfectly with what we've got here. We've got some oranges in the left photo here, we've got all the moody greens ticked in all 4 images, and then we've got some nice light in this shot here, and even in this shot it's quite bright, and you know what, even in this photo here we've got some light coming in from the top. So this is a perfect image to edit against. Now when I say edit against, that doesn't really make any sense, but it will in just a minute, because Lightroom has this really cool feature called the reference tool. So as you can see here, if I open up this photo, it's just this and nothing else. But if I hit this button here, the RA, well, it stands for reference photo and active photo. So the image on the right is going to stay as the active photo, and as you can see, that is the one that I can edit. But then I can get this mood board, drag and drop it into the reference image, and now what I've created is a way that I can easily look at the reference photo while I'm editing the active photo, and this creates a very nice cohesive kind of way that you can edit using a mood board. So now we've got this, we're good to go. I'm going to run you through the edit of the shot on the right, and basically I'd encourage you guys to follow along. If you guys want to use any of the photos here, you're more than welcome to head over to my Instagram account, screenshot them, they're all on there, and let's dive into this photo edit. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to want to do is crop for 4:5 so I know exactly what I'm working for. If you don't know what this weird kind of X crop overlay is, I would highly recommend and highly suggest to check out my 10 Lightroom tips in 75 seconds that will cover this crop tool overlay. Anyway, so I'm going to edit, I'm going to crop to something like this. It might, I just don't like this dark tree on the side, so I might come in just a little bit more, and that kind of rounds off the image there so it doesn't look like there's some kind of weird spacing on the left. Anyway, back to the reference image here. I definitely need to brighten up this shot quite a lot. And I'm also gonna check to see how the white balance is looking. I do prefer that cooler look. And as you can see on the photos on the left, they all have that cooler kind of look to their image. So I think the cooler version of this works. I'm now gonna add a little bit of contrast. Now, not too much. As you can see, the ones on the left, they do have quite a bit of contrast, but they're not crazy. I'm not too sharp here. This was shot at 1/30th of a second. I'm not sure why the photographer was taking it that slow, but they were. Anyway, we're just gonna basically now come down in all the settings and move all the sliders to the right and to the left and just push and pull and kind of reference them to the ones on the right. So I'm gonna probably up the highlights a little bit, increase the shadows a little bit. I'm gonna leave the whites where they are, and then I'm definitely gonna drop the blacks down a little bit. And then moving into the clarity and dehaze of things, maybe a little bit of clarity and a little bit of dehaze, nothing crazy. I can also see on the left that they're a bit desaturated, if you will. So I'm just bringing down the global saturation a little bit here. I don't do this often, but it is nice to just kind of kill out a little bit of that over kind of processed color in the image. So moving on to the tone curve, this is a very, very important part of your editing process. I haven't made a video on it yet, but I promise you that I will. I'm just gonna add quite a basic S-curve on this, basically bringing down the shadows, increasing the mid-tones quite a bit, and then I'm gonna add a nice fade, and this is purely just lifting up the blacks of the image. Now, I can also start to see that this is probably too much on the cool side, so I might just warm this up just a touch, nothing too crazy. And then I'm also gonna take just a little bit of the green out by adding a little bit more purple. And that is looking good. Now, as you can see, the images don't look like the reference images do not look anywhere near like the active photo at the moment. And that's honestly because we haven't come down to this tab yet. This is where you're gonna see a majority of the changes. And this is where you're gonna be able to tweak your images the most. So first things first, the oranges of the image, if we push this way or pull that way, I think they're pretty good where they stand. The yellows are definitely going to be more to the right side so we can keep that kind of greeny vibe to the photo. And then what have we got here? I'm probably gonna move the greens a little bit over to the right, believe it or not. And then I'm just gonna do the same with all the other colors. I believe this is just changing my jacket a little bit. So I'll move the aquas over to the right a little bit. This is definitely changing my jacket. I might move that to the left a touch. And there shouldn't be any purple or any magenta in the image, but I like to kind of just move them, the purples more to the blue side and the magentas more to the red side, because that way it just kind of rolls off any weird color fringing and makes it look just a little bit more natural. So now coming into the interesting part, I know there are basically no reds in this image. You can see a little bit on the ground, so I might desaturate that just a little bit. I'm going to increase the oranges quite a lot. That really brings out the trees, whoa, in the background, and zoomed in a little bit too much. It also makes me just look a little bit more tanned, which is never a bad thing. And it also adds a little bit of oomph into the ground. And as you can see on the left, there is a bit of orange on the bottom left image, so I'm gonna continue with that theme. But here is where we will see quite a lot of the change is in the saturation of the yellows and the greens. So I'm gonna bring them both down, and as you can see, that green saturation is really the key tool here. Looking at the reference image, the greens are really kind of muted, but still prominent in those images. So bringing the saturation down is great. And then we're gonna have a look at the aquas and the blues as well. I think desaturating my jacket a little bit does look quite nice. So I might continue to bring down the blues actually, because in the background, this tree is looking, well, this kind of area is looking just a little bit blue. And as you can see on the left, there aren't too many blues in these shots. So I might just bring these down a little bit, even the aquas, because it's kind of, as I can see there, it's kind of messing with the ones in the back. And then I'm gonna come into the luminance tab here, and I'm basically just gonna continue the same thing, up and down, and I might even bring that down just a little bit. Let's see what's going on here. I might bring these up, I might bring this up just a touch, and then we can see what's going on with the blues. I might bring this up. I think that really stands out and makes my jacket pop quite well. And then we're gonna do the same with these. We might turn them down. And as you can see there, we're really starting to make some progress, which is great. I might bring these oranges down just a little bit. I don't like how prominent they are on the trees, but that is something we're gonna be able to change when we dive into the local adjustments. Now, the local adjustments are probably where you're gonna see, once again, a lot of change. Now, it's gonna add quite a bit of mood and quite a bit of just, once again, oomph into your image, because the local adjustments, you're able to just select one part of the image and, you guessed it, locally adjust it. So first things first, we're gonna add a radial filter around this image, and I'm gonna press O to toggle if you can see or you can't see the selected area. And I'm also probably gonna make this just a little bit bigger, and I'm gonna do that by zooming out. Whoa, maybe let's go to 12%. There we go. Just gonna make this a little bit bigger so it's more covering the corners of the image. And then I'm going to, don't know why these settings are set the way they are, but I'm going to drag down the exposure a little bit here. And I'm also going to warm up the corners just a touch and desaturate it as well. So as you can see there, that's just adding a little bit more vignette on the photo and kind of like targeting into the middle of the image, which is always nice. And the next local adjustment I'm gonna make is a nice gradient filter from the top. And this way it's not affecting like a kind of area, it's more affecting like half and half of the shot and really fades it out. So there's no like harsh lines, which is perfect. So I'm gonna press O again to turn that off. And then I might just increase the exposure a little bit. I'm gonna increase the temperature just a touch as well, and maybe the tint as well, just to take a little bit of that green away. And then we can also desaturate it. And I think that has made it quite nice. I might also drop the blacks. No, I'm not gonna drop the blacks, not at all. Maybe just increase the shadows just a little bit. And then we're just gonna keep increasing that temperature. And we're just looking back and forward on the images, back and forward, and maybe a little bit of contrast up in there. And things are starting to look really good. I think these images are working nearly perfectly together, in all honesty. I possibly might look at exposing the bottom of the image just a little bit more. So I'm gonna put a gradient filter, but this time I'm selecting the bottom of the image instead of the top, and I might just bring up the exposure. Yeah, definitely. So I'm gonna do that, and as you can see, it kind of flattens out the image, but I'm gonna come back to our radial filter here, and I'm just gonna bring down the exposure just a little bit more. And then we're also gonna add another graduated filter. If you can't tell already, I'm a huge fan of local adjustments, and that is where a majority of my edits are made. And I'm just gonna add a little bit of a darker area on the bottom of the image to not only show more depth and make it look a bit longer, but it also just cleans up the image as a whole, especially looking at the images on the left in the reference photo. This is going to suit perfectly. So now having a look at the image, it is looking very nice, and we are not too far into the edit yet. I think leaving the color grading as is, I'm not gonna touch that. If anything, I might add a little bit of warmth into the midtones actually. And I think that's actually looking quite good. We can turn that off just by using that there. It takes a little bit of the blue away, but what we can kind of counter that with is adding just a little bit of blue into the shadows and just dialing back that saturation. And that's looking a whole lot nicer. I'm actually a huge fan of that. And then I'm gonna come down here to the calibration sliders, and I'm gonna be doing the same thing, just pushing and pulling the sliders. This is the best way, in my opinion, to navigate the calibration sliders. So once I've gone to the left, I can see, that's not really the style I'm after. To the right, that's still not the style I'm after. And I'm just gonna leave that in the middle. And then we're gonna do the same thing for the saturation. If anything, I'd probably push it a little bit to the right, but nothing too serious. The greens, what way are we going? Oh, definitely to the right, but quite considerable to the right. And the same thing with the saturation, probably a little bit to the right here. I don't want it to be too orange, so we can always go back up to the top and adjust it. And I don't like the blue at all, so I'm gonna leave that as is once again. And then the saturation, I might just put that up a little bit. Then I'm gonna come back into the saturation up here, and I'm just gonna desaturate the oranges, come back into this graduated filter, and I'm just gonna desaturate a little bit more up there. And I would say we are nearly done. These photos are looking, while they're not the same, very similar. And as you can see, if you use this technique, you can really start to build a more consistent, cohesive Lightroom editing style. So one more thing I would do to this image would be to add just a little bit of light coming in. So I'm gonna draw a radial filter around here, click invert, And then I'm going to just kind of angle it a little bit to show it coming from the top down on the image. I'm then also gonna add a range mask. Now what this is it gives you a range of where the mask will be masking. I hope that makes sense. Maybe just watch. If I come down here and I select luminance, which is like brightness, I can start to remove the dark parts and only keep the bright parts selected. So as you can see, pressing O there looks great. And then I'm just gonna dehaze down a little bit to add a little bit more life into there. And then I'm also just gonna increase the warmth just a touch, nothing too crazy. And there we go. I would say that is basically nearly done. I'm happy with it as is. I think it looks great. If anything, there might just be a little bit of a magenta tone to the bottom of the image here. So I might come down here, desaturate purple and magenta, and then come to the little radial filter and the graduated filter we had here, and just add a little bit of green into there, and maybe even bring this up a touch. And then we can always create another one of these and bring down the exposure a little bit more, which just creates even more depth on the image. And having a look now, that is our final shot. I am stoked with it, and I hope you guys have learned a thing or two. That's gonna be wrapping up today's video, guys. I hope you did enjoy. I have, this is the first time I've kind of walked you through a Lightroom editing session, or like kind of my technique about Lightroom editing. So like I said, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope you learned something, and I hope you can take what we've spoken about today and incorporate it in your own work. So guys, thank you so much for watching. Like I said, I hope you have enjoyed. If you're new around here, consider subscribing. I'm dropping videos every single week. I don't want to let myself down, but most importantly, I don't want to let you guys down. So yes, like I said, I hope you learned something from the video. And guys, as always, I will catch you in the next one. Peace.